We're not judge and jury. We are simply gatherers of the facts. But once we get them, then we defend it. This is the forensics part of it, is what is it I'm looking for and how do I identify it? When you read about science gone bad, it's almost always because somebody was taking shortcuts. Somebody was presuming they knew the answer. That's got a lot of crime labs, it's got a lot of private labs, it's got a lot of police labs into trouble.
We and our customers really we wanted to make sure we didn't make a mistake. No one wants to look back and have an oh shucks.
We looked at the question and said, what does it take to prove beyond a reasonable doubt? We use a statistical term called 95% confidence. 95% confidence that the answers that we derived were correct. So it turned out that that analysis said we had to collect something like 100,000 samples in that building.
Essentially, there were all these artifacts, remnants of normal office work, a cup of coffee, a computer, someone's sweater over the back of their chair.
People left their lunch on their desk. They just ran.
There was clocks that had stopped the very moment that the towers came down, and here you are 6 months later and you're entering that environment and it's frozen at that very second when the power went out or when that floor got evacuated. And in some cases it was just entirely pristine, covered with this fine crystalline dust. In other cases it was destroyed with beams of the Trade Center that had punctured buildings and crashed through desks.
We were hired there to do the science, to do the environmental impact, to do the studies for the customer. But at the same time, it's really hard to do when you're inside the building and you're looking out at the cleanup, or you're looking out and you're sampling some person's desk and you have to move their family pictures, or there's a newspaper maybe there on their desk with the September 11 date on it. That was probably the hardest thing for me to do, is to keep my head in the game and remember why we were there and what we were hired to do. We took samples of the dust. We identified contaminants of potential concern by doing a large series of tests. We then narrowed down the list to chemicals of potential concern that were relevant and indicative of the dust. Then we went through and do a broad sampling campaign to get the nature and the extent of the dust in different areas, including mechanical systems, the buildings.
You know, everybody was just busy working and analyzing samples from A to Z.
It demanded long hours and awful working conditions to go in there and evaluate and identify the materials. Shortly after we started our testing program, I would say within days or whatever, one of our guys found a body part that had been one of the people that had been killed. That put a kibosh on the whole process, because it raised the question, how do you go in here and work? What is this really? Was it an environmental problem? Was it a graveyard? How do you properly treat this dust? Because it wasn't just building materials. It also had components of people that had been shredded, tore up. Another time when somebody called me down to the laboratory and said, I've got this piece of material in the dust. It doesn't look like anything I've tested. A bone fragment. That sticks with you.
It did give you an eerie feeling that the samples that you were analyzing could potentially have remnants of someone So that was really hard at times.
We managed it as carefully as humanly possible. And we kept a continuous eye out to see if there was any remains that would be picked up. Remains were found even after we finished our job. That's something that'll never leave you.
We just kept pushing on because we knew that what we were doing was something important.
As you went along, you had all these people collecting samples. You'd had to develop new methods that would never been used before to not only collect the samples, but to get the data processed. During that whole period of time, what we started to see, and it struck everybody, the TEM operator, the electron microscope operator, would say, I can recognize that World Trade Center dust anywhere. It's unique.